Well, hello. Live video of Thursday night. You'll notice, unless you're watching this later, that it is actually only just a bit past 7, not a bit past 9. I have a thing I've got to take care of again tonight. So I didn't want to miss out doing the video because I love doing them. So I've done it earlier, and then hopefully you'll see it and watch it at 9 o'clock. So apologies if you tuned in at 9 and you missed the live version. Okay, so tonight's video I think will actually be pretty quick. I want to talk about how to do boxed or bagged corners on your little bag project. So what I mean by that is these flat corners here on your, well, any little bag project, big project, any bag, these cross sewn corners here give your bag the ability to stand up nice and flat rather than lay down, and it always gives this extra dimension to your work. And it's one of those things which looks a bit freaky, but once I explain to you tonight, hopefully you understand you can apply it to pretty much anything that you do bag wise, but not necessarily bags. So this guy here is a little pot plant stand that we made in class, which is also designed to be a organizer bowl, and again it is those cross sewn corners give it this lovely square finished edge and lets it sit upright. So I'm going to show you how to do that tonight. Now, depending on what you are sewing, you may need a walking foot for this one. If your bag has lining and pellin or wadding or something in it, then you should put your walking foot on to do that. I'm going to use my big brother 1500 straight stitch tonight because I love using that and it was here already. Yeah, essentially anything with thick layers might be time to put your walking foot on. Oh, I might do a video on when to use your walking foot. I'll put that on my list. Now, speaking of videos, I should apologise to everybody who watched me on Tuesday night have my massive fumble as to whether it should be right side in or right side out. I was thinking ahead of what I needed to next and I had a complete blank. So I panicked a bit, but then I thought, you know what? You guys all know me. There's no point trying to pretend I'm something I'm not. We're all friends here. You don't mind. So apologies for that. We'll try not to fluff it tonight. All right, so what I have here, we'll move these guys out of the way, put it over here. What we have here is just a nice, simple, zippered pencil case that I've whipped up. Now, I've done a video already on how to put a zip in, and I will put a link in the comments. Good morning, Karen. Oh, good morning. So much for my vow to not get anything wrong. Good evening, I should say. So, I made this up tonight. I'll put a link in there on how to insert a zipper. We're going to take this and make it from just an ordinary pencil case into something that looks like one step cooler by giving it those boxed corners, or sometimes you'll hear them called bagged corners. Alrighty, so I would like to say that I unpicked the lining so I could turn this back out, but I so often forget. Actually, that's not true. I'm so often too slack to stitch my lining that I can go ahead and turn my project back to inside out. So we will do that now. I had a lunch bag for years that all my little mini M&Ms and Mars bars and things would all get lost into the crack of the lining. So I still didn't stitch it shut. But you should stitch it shut. You should hand stitch it shut if you want to do a neat job, and if you want to do a quick job you can machine stitch it shut. So let's just turn this back out. Now this is made with a little bit of wadding stitched to it, a little bit of wadding that I have fused on with some 606 spray. Those of you who watched us, oh god, this is tricky. Those of you who watched us do the interfacing video, you would have seen me use 606 spray to use that to glue on pellin and things like that. Alright, so apparently I made this with the smallest opening in the world. Done. Alright. Okay, so essentially you would make your bag, your little zipper purse, or your drawstring bag, or your shoulder bag, or whatever it is you're doing, and you, even if the pattern doesn't have box corners in it, you can do it. You would make it to this point here. Oh, that must have been agonizing for you guys to watch. Sorry. Alright, so here is, so up to here. So we've got this all stitched. We've cut off the corners normally so that we can go ahead and turn our bag out. If you don't know what I mean by that, when you sew your corners of anything that you're going to turn the other way, you want to take this extra fabric out. Some people just cut across, but I cut a little point and I go backwards and forwards on each side of that corner to hold it all together. So that's where we're at now. Now to get this effect here, we only really have to do one more step, and when I say one more step, it's going to take about 10 minutes to do. Tonight you will need a good pair of snippers, fabric marking pen, and I'm going to just use my fave little sewing gauge here. Now what we want to do, there's two ways to do this. The way I'm going to show you tonight is the easier of the two, less bulky and less troublesome for you. The other thing you will need, I forgot, is pins. Some people try and wing it without pins, but we're going to use pins tonight. You know, do as I say, not as I do. And you can't really use wonder clips for this one. It might be just a little bit tricky for you to get it all under your foot. So pins for tonight's project. All right, so you're going to, first of all, imagine how big you want this cross piece to be. So how big you want the base of the bag. So if you want the base of the bag to be this big, so let's say that's all looks pretty big, maybe that's 3 inches, then you need to allow 1.5 inches on either side to do what we do next. Trial and error tends to be the way to make it work. We're going tonight work with 1.25 inches box corners. All right, so that means with this sewing gauge here, there's all markings all over the sewing gauge. And if it looks a bit bewildering at first, but if you just stop and look at it, you'll find there is a marking for all of your measurements. There's 1 inch, there's 1 1/8, there's 1 3/8, and there's 1.25 inches. So what I'm going to, 1.25 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this guy here so that my mark here is not at the edge of the fabric, but at the stitching that I've done. So that way, if you're a little bit uneven on your seam allowance either side, it's being measured from the same place each direction, so that is from the stitch. So I'm going to put my measuring gauge here so that my 1.25 mark, which starts here, goes up here, and then I'm going to, with my Duro marking pen, give a nice thick line. Remember, no one can see in here. Be mindful if you're doing really light fabric, you might want to use a lighter marking pen so it doesn't go through. So that's 1.25 inches that way. And then I might zoom in a little bit more. Would that be easier? I think that's the best I could do because my pot plant's in the way. Okay, so then this mark here, this is my 1.25 inch line, lined up with the stitching, and that gives me this line here. So I'm going to draw a line like so, and a line like so. So I've just made a little box here in the corner. Now I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So from the bottom up, we're going to mark 1.25, from the side out, from the stitching line, 1.25. That gives us a corner mark, and then putting this here straight up to there and straight across to there. Cool? Cool. So repeat on the other side. And now I should say too that with my lining, I always make my lining about 1/4 inch smaller when I cut it, and that stops my lining from being so saggy baggy when I put my bag together or my purse together. Let's go this way. So a little mark at 1.25, mark at 1.25, and then we can just draw a line there and draw our line here. Now if this is something you do a lot, you could make a little template that you actually put in the corner and does the same job. We sell template plastic here, which is a nice stiff sort of not heavy plastic, but it's a crisp fabric plastic, so you can use it to make your own templates and things like that. So you couldn't use it as a ruler, but you could certainly use it to make a template to reproduce something like this if you use it over and over and over again. There. Okay, so we now have 1.25 inches in from the seam on all 4 pieces. So just check. I don't want to make any mistakes tonight. I'm going to be very diligent, and I'm just going to double check off camera. No, I'll do it on camera. Just check that I measured that correctly there, but I have a feeling that that is a little bit shy. So we're just going to fix that. All right, so now next is scissors. You're going to go ahead and chop away these pieces that you've marked. Chop, 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 like so. Now this is my lining here, the gap that I've left in my lining to turn it. I haven't cut to that. We want to make sure that that is still connected by some backwards and forward stitches here. If we cut that and that was the opening for the lining, this would be all floppy and we couldn't do what we need to do next. So make sure that you have some stitching between this and the turning gap in your lining. Cool? All right, not that I've done that before, but so, alrighty, and then this one here. Snip. And snip away the excess, and then snip this corner here. Like I say, I love that wadding with a bit of 606 spray. It gives your bag a little bit of something. And really, I probably should have quilted that, done a couple of rows of quilting, but just for a little pencil case, it'll do our job today. Done. All right, so this may actually start to remind you of patterns that you've seen where your pattern actually has pieces like this missing already. That's what they've just done. They've taken out this corner. So if you see a pattern like that, they're making you make your boxed corners. All right, so next we're going to take these guys here and we'll put them together. So we have just opened them up and it's right sides together, you'll be pleased to know. And we are lining up our seams, but we want our seams, we don't want them all facing that way because that's too thick for your machine. It starts to be a bit of a struggle, particularly depending on what you've made this out of. So we want this to go switch backwards and forwards. So one half of it, the seam points that way, and one half the seam points that way, and then you butt it up next to each other. Do you see that? And that will give us a flatter spot to sew over. And if you do it so that this goes along your feed dogs and this is sewn on by your sewing machine foot, you don't have to worry about this snagging up and catching. So wherever possible, to start off, that's the easiest way. Now, if you try and do it without squishing your bag, it's going to start to be angular, and the whole idea is we want this to be flat, so flat across, like so. So I do that by just tucking in some of the excess of the bag so it looks like that, and then that gives me this nice flat straight line. See that? Now, I'm going to give you permission. If this is a bit wobbly, it's okay. It's cool. It doesn't matter if it's a bit wobbly. If you want to unpick it, you can, but not a lot of pressure. We're going to pin pointing towards where we're sewing, and I've pinned along there. And then if your first one's a bit wobbly, at least you've finished your thing and your next one isn't so wobbly. So don't beat yourself up. Alrighty, a couple more pins. And I am a bit of a shortcut taker when it comes to pinning. I don't make any bones about that. I always say you should pin. But with this, I always pin it. You can't get it without pinning. Otherwise, it's just harder work. So that's what we've got there. And we're going to repeat on this side. Now, when I said you have to have your edges facing away, the trick is, see how this one is folded this way? We would like this one folded this way as well. So we're going to have to go against the grain so that that seam is facing the same direction as the other side, so it doesn't twist up and give us a little bump. So back to back with our seams. Tuck in your bag so it's all squished underneath. And if you have a little drawstring bag, foot control bag, pencil case you've made, shopping bag you've made, and you feel it needs a bit more substance, you could go and get that right now and just bag these corners like this. And if you had no lining, you could just do it on your overlocker. What we're doing here, there's no reason why we couldn't do this on the overlocker. All right, and pin it like so. Okie dokie. So then you would repeat on the lining, but I won't subject you to waiting for me to do that tonight. We will just do these bits here so you can see the finished result. Cool? All right, so now let's put the sewing machine into the shop. The downside of using my big machine is that I have to clear lots of space to bring it over. So sorry, boring TV for a second. Golly. All right, so let's go. Seam allowance on this one. Here, I'm going to probably suggest a 1/4 inch seam allowance along here. For me, I'm just going to sew against this mark on my needle plate. This is a straight stitcher, so I don't have any needle width that I can change. We want to start just on the fabric, a little bit further in than nothing. And we're going to do a few stitches forward, and then make sure we don't sew through that pin. A few stitches forward. And then holding down reverse, you can go off the edge and then back onto it. If you try and start off the edge, oh, the LED light on this machine is strobing so badly on the camera, I apologize. can't do that. Okay, I'll have to just blink in rhythm with the flashing. If you try and start sewing off the edge and start your seam, you'll have trouble getting up over that edge and you'll just get a mess. But if you start, you know, half an inch or quarter of an inch in, do a few stitches, go reverse to the edge and then come back, those stitches are all holding it together and you don't have to stress so much. Alright, so then we just keep sewing through, making sure as we go through that bump everything's facing the right direction, taking out the pin at the end there because that's getting a bit tight, and then when we get to the end, just gently off the edge and then backwards and forwards and you're finished. Cool. So now I usually use a knee lift, lift the foot, but there's no knee lift here, so okay, and trim it. Alrighty, so that is one corner done, and we're going to repeat on, I wish I could put, I might put a bit of sticky tape over that next time. Michael would love it if I put a bit of sticky tape over the machine's light bulb like that, I'm sure. Now, this guy again, lining it up here, making sure these are arranged in the direction we want them to go. Up under the foot starts about a quarter of an inch in, couple of stitches forward, then reverse back off the edge, and then all the way through. Just take our time, and you might have a big bulky bag, just smooth it all out, take the time to squish it all flat as you go, and then right through to the other side, backwards and forwards here, and then trip it. Alrighty, so I'm not going to do the lining, which means that this bag may never ever end up with its lining sewn, but now I want to show you what that looks like when it's finished. So if we do like this, and there is your corners sewn like so, sewn like so, let's trim that thread off there. And like I said, if this is an overlocker, you would do that and it would just overcast the edges. So if you had a bag with no lining, if you overcast those edges, you get a nice neat finish as well. So now that that's done, we need to turn that back through our opening, and I might just quickly just open that up a bit so you don't have to wait quite so long for me to do it. Whoop, there we go. We're going to turn this back through now so you can see the result. Now I've got my finger in here. You can use your point turner. You want to get in there and just smoothen that out, tuck it out, do the other side, smooth it out, tuck it out, and then tuck in all your lining pieces, and the difference is amazing. So same little pencil case, but now all of a sudden, how cool is that? We'll zoom out so you can see it. So now that pencil case sits up nice and easy. You can get into it easier so you can see things that are going to be all lost in the lining because I haven't stitched it up. But those cross-sewn corners now, with very little extra effort, give you a really, really cool looking result. So, upshot of that, easy to do on just about any project as long as you've got enough room to do your corners and not stitch over your turning gap. And remembering, if I get my little measuring gauge now, keep in mind there's a seam allowance, and I find my 1 1/4, which is just there. So see that guy there? That's my 1 1/4. That's my 1 1/4, and that's how we came to that distance there. Cool? Cool. Alrighty guys, so I told you only a quick one tonight, make up for the other ones that went way longer than I said that I would. Thank you so much for watching. If you could please give me a thumbs up, that'd be cool. If nothing else, it's a huge shot in my arm to see that everybody enjoys my videos. Thank you for everyone's feedback about them. I love doing them and am aiming to do them more. And again, apologies if you tuned in at 9, you missed us live. Next video I'm actually going to do a scan and cut video, and that will be Monday afternoon, all going well. So probably around about 3 o'clock if I don't have any disasters between here and there. Okay gang, thanks for watching. Thumbs up if you can. And also too, I'm starting to upload things onto YouTube so that people who don't have Facebook can still watch them. So if you want to jump onto YouTube and search for Mike Sewing Machine Repairs and subscribe, that's a bit of an ego boost for me too. All right peeps, I'm out of here. Bye.